Well, good morning. Not sure about you, but for me, it's hard to believe that August is already upon us. Won't be long and footballs will be sailing through the air. We're not here today to talk about football, but about the news business, a business our guest is very familiar with. The conversation starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, our guest this morning spent over 40 years in the newspaper business, the last 27 years as the publisher of Upper Michigan's largest daily, the Mining Journal. Jim Reeves recently retired from that position, and he's here this morning to share some thoughts and memories from that experience. Jim, welcome to the Ryan Report.
Yeah, thanks,
nice
Don.
To have you
Thanks
with
for
us.
having me.
You and I have known each other for a long time, and I was thinking when you came here as publisher, I was in public affairs at Cleveland Cliffs.
Correct, yeah.
And so that brought us into contact occasionally.
Sure, yeah.
And you know, I was thinking we worked together on some projects with other people, and one of those, back in those early years, was K.I. Sawyer.
Yes,
And trying to, first of all, save K.I. Sawyer, I guess.
Well, save it, and I remember we had a meeting, Elwood Matson was leading the meeting at the time, and I came up with the theme of, let's not talk about saving it, let's expand it. I mean, we've got such a beautiful area for this. The neighbors don't mind the Air Force Base being where it is, and I came up with Operation Expand K.I. Sawyer.
Right. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful, and that went on to what do we do now that K.I. Sawyer is leaving?
Yeah. But what a great community we have, because they worked so hard to put something together so that it wasn't going to be a big black hole when it left. I mean, the Air Force Base continued to build the recreation facility, which was halfway done, but that's part of their process, is they're going to finish that up. They let the community use that for years, and they did get some housing out there, and it wasn't as big of a disaster as we thought, but it's pretty significant. When the fourth largest community in the Upper Peninsula moved out of town,
Right.
that was pretty significant.
Let's talk about you and your career. I've never asked, where did you grow up?
Northern Wisconsin, Rhinelander.
Okay, so you're from Rhinelander.
Yeah.
Okay. And as a kid, did you ever think about being in the newspaper business?
No, not really. My English teachers would have been great. My high school English teachers would have been really happy with me, the fact that I went that direction. They told me how important it was to, learn how to read and write properly and stuff like that. No, I never thought I was going to be going into that.
Where did your newspaper career begin?
Well, it started in Rhinelander at
Okay.
the Daily News in Rhinelander, Wisconsin. It was a 7,000 circulation daily at the time, and I spent 7 years there, and then moved to Thousand Oaks, California for 2 years, and I was a retail sales manager in Thousand Oaks, California. Our twins were born when we were living in Thousand Oaks, California, and then we decided to move back to the Midwest, came back, and I spent 4 years in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin at the newspaper as the ad director. Then I was promoted to publisher of the West Bend Daily News in West Bend, Wisconsin, and then moved up to publisher in Marquette, and been here for 27 years.
You did spend a little time as a reporter, didn't you?
Well, more so when I became a publisher. I mean, I took a lot of our own photos. I did a lot of the editorials. I pitched in on the editorials and some reporting on that, and news photos. If there was something on that, we did go out and we covered. I'd covered that too. So
let's make sure people understand what the publisher is, because the publisher of a newspaper is really the guy in charge. And in another business, he might be called the general manager or CEO.
Well, actually, my title is publisher, general manager, but that is true. There's a lot of confusion between managing editor and publisher and stuff like that. The old Lou Grant show, he was the managing editor, and Mrs. Pinchon was the publisher. But a lot of people didn't understand the distinguishment between the two. So, but yeah, the publisher oversees everything. All the department heads reports to the publisher, and you're ultimately in charge of everything that goes into the newspaper.
And I think people mostly think about the news gathering part of it, but there are several other key functions there, aren't there?
Oh yeah, I mean, we have to have the circulation department. It takes an awful lot of people to deliver the newspaper.
Right.
When we got there, over 20,000 people had to get their paper delivered to their homes. So you have a whole carrier force that's got to be able to do that, and then inside district managers to manage that carrier force. And then you've got an entire advertising department, and you've got an entire editorial department, and then you have a press department where we actually print the press, and then we have a mailroom department where we put all the papers out. And we do that in about an hour and a half every day. Deadline hits around 10:30. The last page goes down to the press room. Press starts out by 10:45, and by about 1:15 every day, we printed all the papers, inserted the inserts into them, and out to the carriers.
And we're going to talk more about change, but Certainly that has to be one of the big changes, the way it actually becomes a newspaper.
Oh, yeah, yeah, even, and I wasn't there in the linotype days when they had to put every letter in piece by piece. But when I started, we had to put, we had to do like, it was in the advertisement, we did all our own photography. We took all our own pictures, developed our own film, printed our own pictures. We used to paste the paper together like a jigsaw puzzle. You ran it through a wax machine with hot wax, and then you put the piece by piece onto the newspaper, and you rolled it down with the roller. And then once it was complete, then you went down, you took a big picture of that. Then that negative from the picture was burnt onto a plate. Then that plate went onto the press. And right now, everything is just done on computer. You hit a button, it goes from computer to the plate. You eliminate a couple of those other areas. So, and everything's digital with photography now. So what you take is what you use on, you know, in the paper.
Did you ever dream when you came to Marquette 27 years ago that you would still be here 27 years later?
No. As a matter of fact, I took a 7-year balloon loan out on the home because I was they were keeping me in a spot about 3 to 5 years. And matter of fact, it took me 6 months before I sold my house back in West Bend, Wisconsin, because I knew I was coming to the top of the world. But what we realized is, in growing up in Rhinelander, Wisconsin, the warmth and the friendliness of the people, when we took our detours to California and through southern Wisconsin, you forget about the quality of people that you meet up here. And once I got up here and spent a couple months, I knew it was for me. I'm a big skier, and I've had a ski team racing out Thursday nights at the Marquette Mountain for 27 years. And you know, just for the family, we love cross-country skiing and biking, so it was perfect for us. And then moved the family, and 27 years later, we're here.
We'll talk some more about how things have changed in just a couple of minutes. Back with more on the Ryan Report after we take this break. Guest this morning is Jim Reeves. Jim just retired as the publisher at the Mining Journal. You know, I was thinking, I remember when the paper was owned by Frank Russell.
Yeah.
You know, and Frank Russell lived in the community, and you know, so he was part of what was going on. Based on that thought, you know, I'm thinking today when most newspapers are owned by larger corporations, the publisher is really the guy that makes that contact with the community, isn't he?
Oh yeah, they have to. You have to be the person that's out front and involved in civic organizations and other community events, on serving on boards. Yeah.
We're not likely to have the president of the owning corporation getting involved in what's going on in Marquette.
Not likely, but the nice thing is with our company, it's more of a family-owned company, and they take more of an interest in things. And like our owner is a big skier himself, and he contributes $1,000 a year to the U.S. Ski Hall of Fame.
Okay.
And he's very proud to do that. They own a couple of ski resorts as part of their corporation. So, you know, in this case, if you called him up and asked him who Jim Reeves was, he'd at least be able to tell you some details about me.
And you actually went through an ownership change.
Yes, I was part of Thompson Newspapers that owned the paper in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, West Bend, Wisconsin, and still owned it when they moved me to Marquette. And their philosophy, frankly, was about, well, we moved 5 times within 10 years with Thompson Newspapers. So okay. I didn't expect to be here that long, but the new company, Ogden Newspapers, their philosophy was, if we've got a publisher that knows the community and knows the people of the community, seems to be doing an okay job, let's keep them.
Right.
So luckily that gave me 27 years.
And it makes sense for the community too, certainly, to
have
a publisher who's involved. You know, there was a time, I was going to say, is the way we cover the news, has that changed much from the newspaper's perspective?
Well, where it's really changed for us, and I think it would be for the television as well, it's social media, because of what you cover. I mean, you know, and we've been very careful about, before we put a story out, making sure we've got all our facts straight and got the details there. And with social media, I mean, there can be a death, a murder in a neighborhood or something like that, and we've got to wait till everything's confirmed and first the kin is notified and stuff like that before we put it out. And social media's got the name usually 10 minutes later after that happens. So that's changed significantly with social media.
I do recall too that, you know, over the years, having lived here all these years myself, there were times when they had a lot of really veteran reporters working for the newspaper.
Yes.
Now you know, we have our veterans here, but we also have a lot of young reporters coming and going.
Right.
That has to have changed the way things work in the industry.
Well, sure it does. I mean, because of the contacts that they have and the knowledge they have about doing their job and stuff like that. I mean, we've got some with close to 40 years there still experienced at the newspaper, but we've got a lot of new ones coming in as well.
Right. The you know, in a newspaper business, you, as I understand it, you kind of depend on 2 areas for revenue: selling the papers and selling advertising. Has that mix changed much over the years?
Yeah, oh yeah, because when I got here and the amount of subscribers you had versus the amount of advertising revenue was about equal, and that's changed significantly now. The circulation revenue is not near as big of a part, maybe 25–30% of your total revenue, where advertising is 70-some% of that revenue. But that certainly has changed too through Amazon and all that, and every time another box store goes out of the market, that's another loss in revenue that we've had.
I can recall, you know, in this business, back when I was first here, way back when, you know, I think about a third of our revenue came from networks. Now none of it does.
Yes,
you know, in fact, you have to wind up paying the networks for some of that coverage.
So it's changed, and it's changed like that in our industry too, just because, you know, the numbers are down both in advertising and in circulation, so you got to run the operation with a lot less revenue and make it still work and still put out a good product.
The newspaper traditionally has become a debate for a forum for public debate. You know, you have daily editorials and letters to the editor. Is much of that left in the editor's hands, or how does that work in a
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, you know, and a lot of times our editorials are supposed to spur people on to comment on it. We know sometimes when we put one out, we're going to get slammed for it by somebody because they aren't going to like what we put in there, but that's the idea. As long as they're talking about you and they're reading and paying attention to your editorials, then you're doing your job.
And you've taken on some controversial issues.
Yes.
Some major ones. I remember one was with the county with the retire, rehire policy. Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that was kind of an amazing situation there because for taxpayers in this area, they paid over $6 million to people that never retired. You know, they called it the retire, rehire. We questioned it right off the bat, and we questioned the legality of it. And frankly, they've never really determined. I think it was still done wrong the way that they did it, but over $6 million were collected by people that never retired, so they were still working. And, you know, in some cases they said they retired at 11:59 one night and then started working again at 12:01 the next day, so they were receiving the regular pay and their retirement pay.
Right.
And so that was over $6 million of taxpayer dollars. Now, by us getting involved in it and the news coverage all the way through MERS down in Lansing, they discontinued the process up here because they knew that if it was really vetted properly, that it probably wasn't done legally. And we even had commissioners talk to us later on about that to say that. Some of them wanted to self-report about the issue, but they couldn't get the whole crew to go along with that, so they didn't do it. And then just a little over a year ago, we did a follow-up on this thing, and we wrote a nice story on it, again explaining it and talking to commissioners, and some of them saying we knew it was wrong, but we couldn't get everybody to go along with correcting it. And we won an award, second place in the Michigan Press Association for that story, and our editorial took first place in the Michigan Press Association because we had changed a system of doing business with the county at the time.
There's one more issue I want to talk about. We have to take a break. Okay. We'll get back with you in just 2 minutes from now. We're talking with Jim Reeves, recently retired publisher of the Mining Journal. Just wanted to at least show you this. It's probably hard to read on camera. As you can see, it says Ironman Award, and it's presented to Jim Reeves in recognition of over 24 years of service without taking a sick day.
Yeah, and it was presented to me by my staff too. This wasn't the company that presented that; it was my staff. So
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so they teased me about that deal, and the Cal Ripken Award. You know, Cal Ripken, baseball player, and he was one of the Iron Man for there. So they told me they were going to give me the Cal Ripken Award if I made it through retirement without that, and I got the Iron Man Award. I
mentioned we're going to talk about one more controversial issue, and that was the gas price. That was one of the wars you started. Tell us about that one.
Right. Well, that was quite interesting with the gas pricing because we kept watching it, and we were always paying 15 cents at least a gallon more than Ishpeming, than Iron Mountain, than Houghton. Now, Houghton, obviously, the Pines gas station up there drives the price down. But we tried to get them to legitimize why the price is that much more here. And we even did the math on if you get a tanker and there's 10,000 gallons of gas, you have to pay the driver to drive from Escanaba up to Marquette. That's an extra hour of driving time. The gas that the truck uses and this and that, but you divide that by 10,000 gallons and you couldn't justify more than a penny a gallon more expensive. The difference was they were more competitive in that market. So we got after the people here. We wrote the stories. One of the guys decided to do a boycott against us. They got 40-some gas stations to boycott us. They would not sell our papers there anymore because we were getting after them for gas prices. within about a month, most of them came back. It did cost us probably significant over $20,000 in lost revenue. But the good news is that we are no longer the highest priced gas in the in the state of Michigan.
Right.
AAA always reported us as the highest price in the state of Michigan,
right.
and that's not happening anymore. I've also done the math on that. That's several $1 million a year that people are saving on gas. So now they can spend it in restaurants, retail outlets, and other areas.
There were other matters, let's say, other issues, other involvements. You had so many community involvements that had a much more positive nature. And certainly one of those that I know you're very fond of was the Cheer Club.
Yeah, the Cheer Club, because to see the families come in, to see the generosity of the families, we get thousands of gifts that are handed to kids on Christmas morning. That wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the Mining Journal Cheer Club. And so we feature a story on the Mining Journal Cheer Club every day from Thanksgiving through till Christmas. And because of that, they get a lot of visibility on it, and we get a lot of gifts. And then those gifts are turned over to St. Vincent de Paul and to the Salvation Army. And then I actually go on the days when they're handing them out to see the people that receive the gifts and stuff. And that's probably is significant of a deal that I'm working with the newspaper. I'm very proud of that. They actually had it before I was there, but I pushed very hard for it while I was there, and I hope to even somehow stay involved in it in the future just to make sure that the gifts are there for the kids.
And speaking of that, you do plan to stay in Marquette.
Yeah, oh yeah, this is home to us now, so yeah.
And you plan to stay involved with some of these groups you've been involved with.
Oh yeah, I've worked with United Way ever since I came here. I started a media consortium, and I've been involved with that for 27 years, so I still want to help with United Way. Obviously through the Salvation Army with the Cheer Club, if it's not directly related from the newspaper to that, just to help out with Salvation Army or St. Vincent's in those areas. I'm president of the Shiras Institute. I'm still going to stay involved with that, and I'm still going to just hang a shingle out there and do a little consulting work probably too.
I think a lot of people aren't familiar with the Shiras, and we don't have the Shiras Institute, and we don't have time to explain it all, but it really has provided a lot of support for many important projects locally, hasn't it?
Yeah, the Shiras Planetarium, the Shiras Pool used to be involved in that. You know, at Picnic Rocks and stuff, they look at that as it's always looked at it was actually Shiras Park, Picnic Rocks, and so Shiras has been very involved in the community. So, and there's been somebody in the newspaper involved with that for probably 30, 40 years. Bob Biolo, the old editor, was involved in that, and I think people before that. So when Bob went off the board, he asked if I would join on it, so I've served several years on that board.
Well, you know, you went 27 years without missing and without having a sick day. Did you show up at the office the Monday after your retirement? Because, you know, that's just what you normally did.
No, I actually showed up on Wednesday. They asked me to come in and introduce the interim publisher, which I did on the Wednesday following my retirement. So,
okay.
No, I wasn't in there Monday, though, but I was in there on Wednesday.
So there have to be some regrets from leaving, I take it?
Oh, it's very mixed emotions. I mean, you know, I was looking forward to it, 42 years in the business. You know, you put in enough time when you've done that. So I look forward to it. But you're going to miss some of the interactions that you have with the people in the community as well.
Certainly. Well, I hope you really enjoy your retirement.
Well, thanks. I'm learned from you. I just have to. Bill Birch, former mayor of Marquette, told me one time he overcorrected when he retired, and I said, "What do you mean, Bill?" He says, "I'm busier now than I was when I was working. I'm going to try not to overcorrect, but I want to stay involved."
There you go. Okay. Thanks for coming in this morning.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
I'll have some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. I probably told you this before, but population statistics fascinate me. Most specifically, population statistics for the Upper Peninsula. This morning, let me share with you a few that I find pretty interesting. Point number one, in the official census reports in the 100 years from 1910 to 2010, the population of the United States more than tripled from 92 million to almost 309 million people. Point number two, if at any time in that same 100-year period, someone had asked you, what's the population of Michigan's Upper Peninsula? And you had said, about 300,000, you would have been correct. So while the rest of the country was tripling in size, we stayed about the same. According to the official census counts, the highest population occurred in 1920 when it hit 332,601. The lowest was in 1970 when it dropped to 304,347. I think that's pretty amazing. And if you're one of those from the let's close down the bridge camp, you'll probably see it as a good thing. For those with a different perspective, the story is even more concerning, but we'll get to that in a moment. You know, if we look at the individual counties from 1900 to 2010, we can see they haven't all grown or watched their population decline at the same time. Menominee County's population actually peaked in 1900. Houghton and Keweenaw counties in 1910. In fact, the population of Houghton and Keweenaw counties is now less than half what it was in 1910. Several counties peaked in 1920, including Iron, Dickinson, Gogebic, Ontonagon, and Schoolcraft. Alger and Baraga counties peaked in 1940, Luce in 1950, and Delta and Marquette in 1980. Only 2 counties peaked at the turn of the century, with Chippewa and Mackinac, both in the eastern end, hitting their highest population level in the 2000 census. Now here's the part that's even more concerning. We're also getting older, not just you and I, the whole population. The median age in most of Michigan and the Upper Peninsula has been steadily increasing in recent years. According to Census Bureau reports, the county with the oldest population in the UP is Ontonagon, with a median age of 58.6 years. Keweenaw County is close behind at 58.1. Iron, Schoolcraft, Mackinac, and Alger counties all have a median age of 50 years or higher. The youngest UP county is Houghton, whose median age is 32.9 years. Marquette County came in at 39.3. All the remaining counties are somewhere in the 40s. So where does that leave us? According to the census people, our UP population in 2018 was estimated to be 303,689. That would be the lowest it's ever been. And then there's that matter of age. I can't give you a number for the UP as a whole, but it's pretty clear we're getting older. The answer, of course, is that we need more babies. That's not something I can help with. How about you? I'll be back in a minute. Time for us to move aside and make way for the Today Show. Remember to keep UpperMichiganSource.com in mind for the latest news anytime and for a rebroadcast of current and past episodes of this show. Thanks to Jim Reeves for coming in this morning to share some memories from his long career in the newspaper business. And thank you for joining us. Hope we can get together again next Sunday morning.